I stared at my boss's daughter across the table, my coffee growing cold between my trembling hands. Her eyes, the exact shade of amber as her mother's, widened with recognition. "You're the new marketing director," she said slowly. "You work for my mom." The restaurant seemed to shrink around us as the horrifying realization settled in. My boss had set me up with her own daughter, and neither of us had any idea until this moment. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more unexpected twists and emotional journeys like this one. 3 months earlier, I had moved to Boston for what I considered my dream job. After years of grinding away at smaller agencies, Meridian Marketing had finally noticed my portfolio and offered me the director position I'd been working toward my entire career. The salary was double what I'd been making, the benefits were incredible, and the opportunity to work under Catherine Winters, a legend in the industry, was something I couldn't pass up. Catherine was everything I expected: brilliant, demanding, and intimidating. At 52, she had built Meridian from the ground up, turning it into one of the most respected boutique agencies on the East Coast. Her silver-streaked dark hair was always perfectly styled, her wardrobe impeccable, and her standards impossibly high. During my first week, I watched her reduce an account executive to tears over a misplaced decimal in a budget proposal. "I don't tolerate mediocrity, Daniel," she told me during my orientation. "That's why I hired you. Your work shows promise, but promise isn't enough here. I expect excellence." I was determined to prove myself worthy of the position. For the first 2 months, I worked 14-hour days, took no weekends off, and volunteered for every challenging client that came through our doors. My apartment remained half unpacked, my social life non-existent. Boston might as well have been a series of routes between my apartment, the office, and the occasional coffee shop where I'd work on presentations. It was Catherine who first mentioned my lack of work-life balance, surprisingly enough. She called me into her office late one Friday evening when everyone else had already left for the weekend. "Daniel, your work has been exceptional," she said, reviewing my latest campaign proposal. "But I'm concerned." My stomach dropped. "About the Johnson account? I can revise the—" "No, not about your work. About you." She set down her reading glasses and fixed me with that penetrating gaze. "You've been in Boston for 2 months and you work more hours than I do. That's saying something." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. "I want to make sure I'm meeting expectations." "You're exceeding them. But you're also heading for burnout, and I can't afford to lose you to that." She leaned back in her chair. "When was the last time you went on a date, Daniel?" The question caught me completely off guard. My personal life had never been a topic of discussion with any previous employer, let alone someone as formidable as Catherine Winters. It's been a while," I admitted, feeling heat rise to my face. The truth was, my last relationship had ended badly just before I moved to Boston. Emma and I had been together for 3 years, and she'd made it clear she had no interest in leaving Chicago for my career obsession, as she called it. Catherine nodded as if confirming a suspicion. "I thought so. Listen, I know what it's like to be new in a city where you don't know anyone. I was there once, many years ago." For a brief moment, I saw something softer in her expression, a glimpse of the woman behind the executive persona. "I have someone I'd like you to meet," she continued. "Smart, creative, around your age. I think you'd hit it off. You want to set me up on a date?" I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. She smiled, amused by my reaction. "Is that so shocking? I'm not just a boss, Daniel. I'm a human being who occasionally takes an interest in her employees' well-being." I didn't know how to refuse without seeming ungrateful or, worse, disrespectful. "That's very thoughtful of you." "Good. I'll set it up for next Saturday. Café Laurent on Newbury Street, 1 p.m. It's a lunch date, so even if it's terrible, you'll still have your evening free." She turned back to her computer, clearly considering the matter settled. As I left her office, I felt a mixture of confusion and resignation. A blind date arranged by my boss was the last thing I wanted, but Catherine Winters wasn't someone you said no to easily. The following week passed in a blur of client meetings and deadline crunches. By the time Saturday arrived, I'd almost forgotten about the date until my phone alarm reminded me that morning. I dressed casually but carefully, dark jeans, a blue button-down that Emma had once said brought out my eyes, and a light gray blazer. I even trimmed my beard, which had grown somewhat unruly during my weeks of work immersion. Café Laurent was an elegant little bistro with wrought iron tables and large windows overlooking the street. I arrived 15 minutes early, my stomach knotted with the awkward anticipation that comes with blind dates. Catherine had been frustratingly vague about details, only telling me that her name was Olivia and that she'd be wearing a green scarf. At precisely 1 p.m., a young woman walked through the door, and my heart skipped a beat. She was striking, tall and slender with dark hair falling in loose waves past her shoulders. And around her neck was a deep emerald scarf that set off her fair skin perfectly. But what caught me off guard were her eyes, a distinctive amber color that seemed oddly familiar. She scanned the cafe until her gaze landed on me. I stood, raising my hand in an awkward half-wave. She approached with a confident stride that also seemed strangely familiar. "You must be Daniel," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Olivia." "It's nice to meet you," I replied, shaking her hand. "Should we sit?" We settled at the table, and an uncomfortable silence fell between us as we studied our menus. There was something about her that I couldn't quite place, a sense of déjà vu that nagged at me. "So," she finally said, setting down her menu, "how do you know Catherine?" The question seemed odd. Wouldn't Catherine have told her friend how we knew each other? "She's my boss, actually. I'm the new marketing director at Meridian." Olivia's expression changed instantly, her eyes widening with shock. "You work at Meridian? Under Catherine Winters?" "Yes," I said slowly, confusion growing. "How do you know her?" She stared at me for a long moment before letting out a short, incredulous laugh. "She's my mother." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "Your mother?" I repeated stupidly. "Yes. Catherine Winters is my mother. And apparently, she set me up on a blind date with one of her employees without bothering to mention that little detail to either of us." I stared at my boss's daughter across the table, my coffee growing cold between my trembling hands. Her eyes, the exact shade of amber as her mother's, widened with recognition. "You're the new marketing director," she said slowly. "You work for my mom." The restaurant seemed to shrink around us as the horrifying realization settled in. My boss had set me up with her own daughter, and neither of us had any idea until this moment. This is... I struggled to find the right word. Mortifying? Inappropriate? A complete ambush? Olivia supplied, her cheeks flushed with what I assumed was embarrassment or anger. "All of the above," I agreed. I had no idea Catherine even had a daughter. "She keeps her personal life very separate from work," Olivia said. Something I thought I benefited from until about 30 seconds ago. An awkward silence fell between us. I took a sip of my now cold coffee just to have something to do with my hands. "Look," I finally said, "I completely understand if you want to end this right now. This is beyond uncomfortable, and I value my job too much to..." "Is that why you agreed to this?" she interrupted. "Because she's your boss and you felt you couldn't say no?" The question caught me off guard with its directness. "Partially," I admitted. "But also because I haven't exactly been making an effort to meet people since moving here. I've been working non-stop." Olivia nodded, a hint of understanding softening her expression. "That sounds like the kind of person my mother would hire." She studied me for a moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "Well, we're already here. And I'm actually hungry. So maybe we just have lunch? As two adults who happen to meet under bizarre circumstances?" Her suggestion surprised me. I'd expected her to make a polite excuse and leave. Are you sure? Won't this be weird? Oh, it's definitely weird, she said with a small smile. But I'm curious now. What kind of person has my mother deemed worthy of both Meridian and, well, me? There was something disarming about her candor, a quality that put me slightly more at ease despite the situation. All right, I agreed. Lunch it is. As we ordered and began to talk, the initial awkwardness gradually gave way to genuine conversation. Olivia, I learned, was 32, 2 years younger than me, and worked as an architectural photographer, a career that allowed her to combine her love of design with her artistic eye. She had her mother's intelligence and directness but possessed a warmth and easy laugh that Catherine rarely displayed at work. So what made you leave Chicago for Boston? She asked as we shared a dessert, a chocolate tart that the server had insisted we try. I told her about the opportunity at Meridian, how it had been impossible to turn down despite Emma's ultimatum. 3 years together, and she wouldn't even consider moving with you? Olivia asked, frowning. She had her own career, her family nearby. I understood her reasons, I said, though the hurt still lingered. But it made me realize we wanted different things. Olivia nodded thoughtfully. I had something similar happen last year. James got a job offer in San Francisco, a great opportunity. He assumed I'd just pack up my life and follow him. When I suggested we try long distance for a while until I could transfer my client base, he said he needed someone more supportive. Ouch, I winced. That's rough. It was a blessing in disguise, she said with a shrug. Better to find out we had different priorities before things got more serious. By the time we finished our meal, nearly 3 hours had passed. The conversation had flowed so naturally that I'd almost forgotten the bizarre circumstances that had brought us together, until Olivia brought it up again. So, she said, stirring the last of her tea, what are we going to do about my mother? The question brought me crashing back to reality. Catherine Winters was still my boss, and I'd just spent the afternoon with her daughter. I have no idea, I admitted. I've never been in a situation remotely like this before. Olivia's lips curved into a mischievous smile. We could say nothing. Let her wonder. That seems risky. Or, she continued, we could tell her exactly what we think of her meddling. I imagined confronting Catherine about her matchmaking scheme and felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Also risky. Olivia laughed at my expression. Relax, Daniel. My mother respects honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. It's one of her better qualities. As we left the cafe, standing somewhat awkwardly on the sidewalk, I found myself reluctant to end our time together. Despite the circumstances, I'd enjoyed Olivia's company more than I had anyone's in a long time. This was. I began. Surprisingly not terrible, she suggested with a smile. I was going to say, really nice, actually. Her expression softened. It was. Unexpected, but nice. A brief silence fell between us, filled with unspoken questions about what happened next. Would it be completely inappropriate if I asked to see you again? I finally asked. Outside of this bizarre setup? Olivia considered me for a moment, her amber eyes, so like her mother's yet somehow warmer, studying my face. Probably, she said. But I'm going to say yes anyway. My heart lifted unexpectedly. Really? On one condition, she added. We tell my mother together. Tomorrow night. She's having me over for dinner, and you're going to join us. The thought of facing Catherine after this revelation made my stomach clench, but looking at Olivia's determined expression, I knew I couldn't refuse. Deal, I said, extending my hand as if to seal a business arrangement. She ignored my hand and leaned forward to kiss my cheek instead. See you tomorrow, Daniel. Wear something bulletproof. As I watched her walk away, I couldn't decide if I was more terrified of facing Catherine Winters or more excited about seeing Olivia again. Either way, my life in Boston had just become considerably more complicated, and infinitely more interesting. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of anxiety and anticipation. I cycled through every possible scenario for how the dinner might unfold, none of them particularly reassuring. Would Catherine fire me on the spot for daring to agree to a second date with her daughter? Would she reveal that this had been her plan all along? The uncertainty was maddening. By Sunday evening, I was a bundle of nerves as I stood outside Catherine's Beacon Hill townhouse, a bottle of wine clutched in my sweaty hand. The home was exactly what I would have expected, elegant, historic, and intimidating, much like its owner. Olivia answered the door, her smile both reassuring and conspiratorial. She wore a simple blue dress that made her eyes seem even more striking, and for a moment, I forgot my anxiety entirely. "You came," she said. "I half expected you to flee the country." I considered it, I admitted. But international flights were too expensive on such short notice. She laughed and ushered me inside. The interior of the townhouse was a sophisticated blend of traditional architecture and modern furnishings, warm wood floors, crisp white walls, and art that I suspected was worth more than my annual salary. "Mother's in the kitchen," Olivia said, taking the wine from me. She was surprised when I told her I was bringing a guest, but I didn't say who. "I thought we should see her face when you walk in." "That seems a bit cruel," I said nervously. "Trust me, she deserves it after that stunt she pulled." Olivia's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Besides, my mother appreciates a good strategic move, even when she's on the receiving end." We found Catherine in a spacious kitchen, stirring something that smelled delicious on the stove. She wore casual slacks and a silk blouse, the most relaxed I'd ever seen her, but still managed to look effortlessly elegant. "Olivia, would you open the wine that's breathing on the counter?" "Your mystery guest can." She turned and froze mid-sentence when she saw me standing beside her daughter. For perhaps the first time since I'd known her, Catherine Winters was completely speechless. "Look who I brought, Mother," Olivia said sweetly. "I believe you know Daniel." Catherine recovered quickly, her surprise transforming into something that looked suspiciously like satisfaction. "Daniel. What an unexpected pleasure." "Is it unexpected, though?" I found myself asking, emboldened by Olivia's presence beside me. "Considering you're the one who set up our blind date?" Catherine had the grace to look slightly abashed, though the expression was fleeting. "I see you two figured that out." About 30 seconds after we met, Olivia confirmed. "What were you thinking?" Catherine set down her wooden spoon and faced us directly. "I was thinking that two intelligent, attractive, single people with complementary personalities might enjoy meeting each other." Was I wrong? Olivia and I exchanged a glance, neither of us quite ready to give her the satisfaction of being right. "That's not the point," Olivia said. "The point is that you manipulated both of us without our knowledge or consent." "I prefer to think of it as creating an opportunity," Catherine replied smoothly. She turned to me. "Daniel, would you mind opening that bottle of wine Olivia's neglecting? I think we could all use a glass for this conversation." Somehow, I found myself following her instruction, uncorking the wine while mother and daughter engaged in a silent battle of wills that seemed to communicate volumes. "You could have just introduced us normally," Olivia finally said. "Like a regular person would." "Would you have agreed to meet one of my employees if I'd suggested it outright?" Catherine countered. Olivia hesitated. "Probably not," she admitted reluctantly. "And Daniel, would you have been comfortable dating your boss's daughter if I'd been transparent about the connection?" I nearly dropped the wine bottle. "Definitely not," I said honestly. "Exactly." Catherine looked triumphant. "Sometimes people